at a young age, I was actually quite thin, quite skinny. First of all, I just wanted to just start training and, get the biceps and. So my dad would just show me the basics. This is how you squat. This is how you bench. This is how you deadlift. It's sort of just come naturally to me. And I think within a couple of weeks, I think I pulled up like 130, 140 kilo on the deadlift. And like I said, my body weight was only like 58, 59 kilo.
Yeah.
I thought, do you know what? Actually, I might be all right on this. And he goes, why don't you have a look at competitions? He goes, and I was like, what, is that a thing? So then we decided to enter a competition rather than at the age of, 17, 18, going down to the park and having a drink or whatever with friends. I was training. And then I went to the Worlds and then I won the Worlds. Are you sure you're okay, Mr. Cheema? And then that's when I turned around and I said, no, I'm not actually. And then I got a bit teary-eyed and I said to him, look, I don't know what the fuck's going on with me, doc, to be honest. I was totally honest with him. My mental health was actually starting to affect me, but I didn't realize that. And me feeling like that was the start of things to come, basically. The things, it'd just be sort of building up, and I can feel this build up, and then I'd just explode when I would break down, as in emotionally at home sometimes, but I wouldn't know what it was. In everybody else's eyes, he's a big, strong power lifter. They're going to think I'm weak, or they're going to think I'm not good enough, or they're going to go and gossip to somebody else. Because of that ego, people are suffering, especially blokes are suffering in silence. Yeah, hence the reason why I decided to come out and talk about it, because to be honest, it wasn't easy.
My guest today is a two-time world powerlifting champion. He is also a podcast host and a mental health advocate. Welcome, Bally Cheema. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good, thanks, bro. How you doing? You okay?
I'm good. We're getting back to normality soon. The gyms are opening soon, so it should be back to normal.
I know. At the moment, I've hijacked the conservatory, which is actually my daughter's playroom. So she's been asking me on a day-to-day basis, Daddy, when am I going to get my room back again? So I don't know whether you can probably see this behind me, but that's me just covering up all her toys that I've got in here. So I'm hoping that the gym area is cleared, so everything could go in here, and then I can have this back as my chill out room again.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I've done the same with my conservatory. I haven't got too much equipment, but I got a kettlebell just before the lockdown happened, and I quite like it. I wasn't really into kettlebells beforehand, but they're quite versatile, so
yeah,
it gives a good workout. But what I like to do at the beginning of each podcast, as you know, is just take a sort of trip down memory lane. Tell me a bit about your cultural background, a bit about your childhood, and a bit of context of who you are.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Sikh family, so I'm a Sikh myself. Born and bred in Leamington Spa, still live in Leamington Spa. And yeah, so when I first, at a young age, I was actually quite thin, quite skinny, really lightweight, skinny, gangly. I was actually fairly tall for my age, but I think lifting sort of stumped my growth. But yeah, so I had a normal childhood. I enjoyed going to school, went to high school, and then from high school I went to sixth form, and then after that I started working. I didn't go to uni or anything like that. Uni wasn't really for me, I didn't think. And I started working, and that's about it, really. Yeah.
There is a lot of happening in Leamington Spa, isn't there? Like I hear
Loads.
a lot of loads. Is it a hot spot?
Yeah, loads. I think our gondola is quite popular as well, which has been built newly as well. But yeah, there's a load of happening in Leamington.
So when you were growing up, did you feel like it was probably a bit easier because you were surrounded by like-minded? And
yes and no. I think the upbringing sort of spread out across Leamington, but Leamington's not a big place, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So like going to school, everyone sort of knows everyone in Leamington. I think it's quite similar to like places like I think Southall, Slough and things like that. I think that's quite similar, where they've got quite a big Sikh community and everyone sort of knows everyone. Well, I think every up and I was connected in some kind of way. I'm sure me and you are related in some kind of way down the road as well. So, but yeah, so no, it was good. Leamington's a good vibe. I've always lived here. I've enjoyed living in Leamington. But yeah, majority of my friends are pretty much spread out across the country, to be honest.
Throughout this podcast, I've spoken to quite a lot of fitness people, and it does seem like that, and you've already mentioned it, it does seem that most people go down the fitness route for two reasons. They're either on the larger side of life, like I was, and try to shed a few pounds and then get addicted to the sort of the weightlifting side of things, and then sort of stick in it that way. Or like you just mentioned, on the skinnier side of life, and sort of want to gain mass. Is that I imagine that is probably why you joined the gym.
Yeah, that's correct. So my dad actually is a powerlifter. My dad coaches me, and he still coaches me till this day. So he was like a heavyweight powerlifter. So he was like this big unit. He still is a big unit, to be honest. But like I was aspiring to sort of be like him. Like I was really, really skinny. I was probably about 58, 59 kilo. And I'm talking about him being about 110 odd kilo, pretty much pure muscle. So like looking up to him when I was about 14, 15, I was thinking to myself, shit, you know what? I'd love to be like that. And I used to watch like him training and stuff like that. And I'd just be in awe of it all. The gym we train at is called the Nelson Gym. And I still train there now. It's like an old school Rocky kind of gym. It's like a spit and sawdust kind of gym. But you don't get no egos in there. Everyone sort of just helps each other out as a committee run gym. So it's not packed out all the time. But the people that are there, everyone sort of just supports each other. And my dad's been there for many, many years. And so I sort of transitioned into that. I grew up watching the Rocky movies and so on and so forth. So I had like various different ambitions from time to time where I was thinking, you know what, I'd love to do boxing. And I did it for a bit, but I just thought to myself, you know what, I ain't got the fucking stamina for this. This ain't right, especially on a fucking desi diet. So then I started looking towards like powerlifting and just, first of all, I just wanted to just start training and, get the biceps and, impress
Kills for the
with
gills.
the guns. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's what most people go in for, is just to start looking a bit more aesthetically pleasing, especially when they get to that age of wanting to attract the opposite sex. I'm trying to be as politically correct as I can here. But it is what happens, and then you sort of get addicted to the side of actually, I think it's when you see your progress. Do you know what I mean? When you start getting comments and you see your own progress of wow, you've changed a bit, and you can feel it a bit. As long as you stick it out within the first couple of months of seeing that progress, and afterwards you just start flying and getting like addicted to it.
And that's it. It's just consistency. I think what people do is the biggest mistake most people do, especially beginners. I've seen it day in, day out, where they'll come into the gym and all they'll think of is how much weight can I start lifting? And like literally they'll do one session and then all of a sudden just start putting on like 10 kilos and just go mad on it. But you're like, what the hell are you doing? You need your body to sort of develop and understand that you're doing something, you're lifting weights, you need those tendons to sort of strengthen. And but people just go crazy at it. They get an injury after about 5-6 weeks and then they don't go back to the gym again.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyone that starts training, everyone was a beginner at one point. So just focus on being a beginner and not worrying about anything else, as in trying to get big so quickly or trying to lift so many weights so quickly.
100%. And I think like yourself, I was quite fortunate when I went into the gym that one of my mates was already like years into it, and sort of had and tested and trialed a few things and was on the way to becoming a personal trainer and getting his qualification. So for me, when I got in, I sort of just absorbed a lot of his sort of information that he'd learned, and like self-educating that he'd done over the years. And obviously for yourself, you would have had your dad probably guiding you as well. And I talk about it a lot, as that it is sometimes quite a daunting experience if you go in sort of unaware of what to do. Like, as you said, you can create a lot of injuries, and then you sort of get, I guess, mentally scarred from going back there.
Yeah.
100%. What was the sort of switch from you? So obviously you mentioned there, like you went purely for like aesthetics at the beginning and trying to get like your big arms and things. What was the sort of switch from when you realized powerlifting was a thing?
So when I started out, I started training with my dad, and I joined the Nelson gym. I think I was 14, 15. I think I was just turned 15. Yeah, just turned 15. So my dad would just show me the basics. This is how you squat. This is how you bench. This is how you deadlift. Um, but with the deadlift, it's sort of just come naturally to me. And I think within a couple of weeks, I think I pulled up like 130, 140 kilo on the deadlift. And like I said, my body weight was only like 58, 59 kilo.
Yeah.
And and I was 15 years old. So I thought to myself, do you know what? Actually, I might be all right on this. Uh, and then slowly, but again, because I had my dad's guidance, it was a case of I sort of just fell into it where, like, when we were squatting and then slowly adding a 5 kilo plate and then adding a 2.5 kilo plate, but very steadily. And I was going through the weights very steadily. And I was growing, as in lifting wise, I was getting stronger. Um, and then there's a chap in our gym, an older chap. He's been doing it for absolutely years, Dennis. And he goes, why don't you have a look at competitions? He goes, and I was like, what, is that a thing? I didn't realize that was a thing. I was in like young lads. I've seen like older men lifting, but not like kids effectively. So we had a look into it, and he goes, look, there's this federation, and this was, well, there was internet about, but not as freely as it is now.
The
And like, he
dial-up
gave
days.
some magazine, yeah, good old dial-up days. When your mum's kicking off downstairs saying, "Why the hell are you on the phone? I'm trying to make a phone call." So he gave like these magazines, and like there was like some totals in there of what people are lifting, my sort of age, and I was thinking, you know what, I'm actually smashing that. I think I'm doing all right in that. So then we decided to enter a competition. So I entered a competition and I come second, and I qualified for the British I can't remember what year it was, but like I said, I was 15 going on 16. So yeah, a few years ago. So I entered that, and I done well, and I really enjoyed it. I just enjoyed the whole vibe and the way people were. The good thing with powerlifting is even if it's a strange environment, even if whoever you're competing against, everyone sort of still pushes each other. Like, everyone's got that competitive streak. Don't get me wrong, I've got that competitive streak in me big time, where I want to win. But like, it's a weird kind of thing how people sort of still support each other when they're lifting against each other. So I sort of enjoyed that kind of community as well. I thought this is really good. And that was it. I got the bug from there, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's that thing of like mutual respect because they know what you're going through. Do you know what I mean? It's like, when you see boxers who trash talk each other throughout the entire camp and then they shake hands at the end of it because they know through the camp that you've went through the work that they've went through. So it's that sort of mutual respect, I imagine. And that's the most important thing with like a lot of sports when like you're young, because it does teach you like the discipline, obviously, to do the thing that you're doing, competing in whatever sport it is, but it also is that like respect, because you know that the other person's going through the same thing as you. As you say, you got second there, and then you go on to the British, and you won the
British. So I went on to the British, and I won the British, but I wasn't actually planning. I was quite close to not actually competing for the British because my granddad actually passed away. Literally, I'm talking about a week and a half before the competition.
Oh, wow.
So I wasn't actually planning on lifting. I go to dad, I'm not going to do it. I'm not in the right mindset. I don't want to do it. I'm very close to my granddad. And so my dad goes to me, he goes, look, your granddad, my granddad always said that I was going to become world champion. God knows where he saw it from, because like I said, I was a skinny little kid, but he said to my dad, he's going to become world champion one day. And dad was like, yeah, whatever, mate. But yeah, my dad was like, look, he goes, I know you're not right in the head, as in, you're emotionally not there, but he would have wanted you to lift. So then I decided, it was a few days before his funeral, actually, I ended up lifting. I think from my memory, what I can remember, I lifted on the Saturday, and the following Thursday was actually his funeral. So I lifted and I actually won the British, and yeah, amazing feeling, but it was mixed emotions because of everything that had gone on. And they gave me like a special pen, which was saying like you're British champion, this, that, the other, as well as the trophy and stuff. And I remember on the funeral, I actually popped that into his pocket, and that was quite emotional for me.
Do you think that like you sort of had, I know it's a weird thing to say, but do you think you had like extra motivation from that as well? As in like you wanted to sort of dedicate it to him?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a case of, and that wouldn't be the first time where I'd use him as motivation to go out and do something on the powerlifting stage. So yeah, definitely was 100%.
It is weird. Like obviously, like it's a negative, but I think you sort of turned it into a positive, which is the best thing that you can do. Do you mean at the time? I think your dad probably had it right, as in like you might have regretted it if you didn't do it. So it's a good thing that like obviously you did it and you won.
Well, that potentially could have stopped everything. As in, I might not have, I had the one competition. I could have left it at that and just, gone in a completely different direction. So because of that, I think that's what I've progressed and gone on to do further.
So this was the British Youth Championships, or was this a
So
senior?
this was the British under 16s, under 16s powerlifting.
As as an under 16-year-old, how does that sort of do for your ego and confidence?
Fuck it now. Well, the local papers, I was in the local papers and so on and so forth. And then the school that I was in, they were sort of bigging me up, and fucking hell, I was just like, you know what, I'm the man.
Yeah.
But it was good because I got all that exposure. I wasn't expecting that exposure, but then it sort of gave me that sort of drive to think, I want to do more now. I want to do more. And rather than at the age of, 17, 18, going down to the park and having a drink or whatever with friends, I was training. So it kept me sort of away from that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I think any kind of support, especially if you start at a young age, is really, really good for you. With your, especially with your late teenage years, when peer pressure can amount to, you end up doing some stupid stuff. Don't get me wrong, I've done some silly stuff, but it did help me quite a bit, to be honest, to move away from that and have a goal and have a focus.
I don't know if it's too late to say this, but I had a joke in my head, and I want to get it out. I was gonna say, instead of Billy Big Bollocks, it has to be Bally Big Bollocks now.
Actually, I might start using that name. I actually quite like that now.
Yeah. No, but 100%. Like I think, and
it had its flaws. So, like we would go out when we were about 17 or whatever, go out to the pubs and stuff, as you would do.
People knew that you were underage.
Most do, but anyway, yeah. I went to the door once, and this place was notorious. I can talk about it now because it's closed down. It was a place in Leamington called Ocean Bar. Like I said, I could talk about it now because it's closed down now. But this place was notorious for, you knew that everyone from your sixth form or your high school was in there, right? On a Saturday night. It was just a place that everyone would be, and they'd let everyone in. One of the days I walked up there, and the bouncer turned around. He goes, "Oh, how you doing, mate? You all right?" I was like, "Yeah, good, thank you, good, thank you." He goes, "Oh, I saw you in the paper the other day." He goes, "Oh, well done on your lifting." I was like, "Yeah, cheers, mate. Ego was, yeah, even the bouncers know. Then he turns around, he goes, "Yeah," he goes, "I saw you lifted in the under 18s." He goes, "Not tonight, mate." I was like, oh. And everybody else was in there, and I was just like, "You fucking joking?" But yeah.
It's not fun. It's not fun. Like that's probably the only time that it's been a bad thing, I assume, though.
Definitely.
Yeah. So obviously, like we were saying about confidence, from like the skinny side of things to you probably put on a bit of muscle mass now. You're known, and that sort of confidence obviously can go out of control. Is one way of putting it, and obviously we're joking about Bally Big Bollocks and all that, but sometimes it is actually like a really important thing, because during them teenage years, it is like where most people like not just young boys, young girls, everyone I think goes through them years of insecurity. Not just the discipline that we mentioned as a benefit from the gym, but do you think that side of things is also like a good thing for mental health, which obviously we're going to come on to in a bit as well?
110%. It's the, like you said, the discipline thing. I think it's very, very important, and it kept me actually quite grounded, even though I did have that ego thinking, yeah, do you know what, I'm in the papers and blah blah blah. And it's not in my nature to sort of walk around as in giving it 10 and saying, look, I'm a powerlifter and I do this and I do that. That's never been in my nature. And even I was getting a lot of respect from older people, so people in their 20s, 25s, 30s, sort of saying, oh, well done, this at the end. And I was very humble about it. And I said, look, I really appreciate it. Thank you for that. Rather than, I could have gone the other way and turned around and said, well, yeah, I am this and I am that. But I think that's because the way that I've been brought up, my upbringing, keeping humble, and the discipline side of things, and understanding the actual work that I actually put in to actually compete and do what I was doing.
100%. I think it is obviously like everyone's family will play a part in this as well, but the religion as a whole, like the culture as a whole, is very much part of like Sikh values.
100%.
Actually, on that topic, do you think your like cultural background and genetics has played a part in your strength as well? Because you hear in England about farmer strength, and I think obviously, well, I guess Punjabis were the epitome of that, really. So do you think like when you're deadlifting and your numbers are shooting up, do you think that plays a part as well?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think culturally as well as spiritually as well. So spiritually, when I'm going for a big lift, I always say Waheguru. I've always got something in my head, thinking about God before I do a lift, and that plays a big part in my lifting as well. And with our background of being warriors and Sikhs being in Sikhi and stuff, that plays a massive part in it. Definitely a humongous part in it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm seeing like now, obviously, like I think maybe with social media, it's like there's more happening getting into various amount of sports. And I think obviously it's highlighted a bit more on social media, and it's going to be interesting to see how like we match up against people from other backgrounds and things, because everyone's genetic makeup's different. And I don't know if like growing up stereotypically, Asians as a whole have been like called maybe genetically weaker. I don't know if that's the right term to use, but we've been seen as like quite small compared to like say your black athletes or even your white athletes or something. So it'll be interesting to see going forward, because I think obviously, as we were saying, there's strength there. There's quite a few powerlifters, and I've had a couple on the podcast now. Inderraj Singh as well, and there's a boy in Holland called Jagaraj Singh, and he's Dutch junior champ over there. So we definitely have like the genetic capability, but it'll be interesting to see how many different fields we can get into at a high level.
Exactly. I think, well, like we've got is Tal Singh that's going to be coming out with
Amir Khan.
With Amir Khan. That's big news. That's big news as well. So do you know what? The more uppity we can get in sport, the better it is. And even from a physical and a mental side of things, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's the amazing thing about it. Like I'm big into boxing, so I've had a couple of boxers on. Inder Bassi is a pro boxer with MTK as well, and I've had him on. And I think it's, with our background, it is very much the deterring from sports side of things. As a majority, obviously there are exemptions to that as a stereotype, but it is mainly like, right, let's not get into sports because it's not lucrative. Let's stay into school, stay in academia, get your degree, get your job, and things like that. And hopefully now, again, with social media, when you see other people doing what you want to do, it becomes that bit more achievable. And I've said that throughout like all the podcast episodes, because I think it is very true. When you see somebody like yourself powerlifting and speaking out about the topics that you do, it becomes a bit more like it breaks that stigma, essentially.
Yeah, no, that's the whole goal of it. Completely off topic. Well, actually, not that off topic now. Now you've told me you're a big boxing fan. I'm a massive fucking boxing fan. Humongous boxing fan.
Joshua Fury.
Joshua Fury. Go on.
I've asked this to quite a few people now, and So I'll say Inder said Fury. A amateur boxer from Wolverhampton called Gully said Joshua. And I am leaning towards the side of Joshua at the moment. I want him to win. I should say I want him to win. If it was before the Pulev fight, if this fight happened last year before the Pulev fight, I would 100% say Tyson Fury. However, by the time the fight happens, Tyson will be out of the ring for around 15 months, 15, 16
Don't
months.
make a difference to Tyson. He's the
can
king.
Say that.
He's
he can
the
say
king.
that. But even before Wilder, he had like 2 or 3 tune-up fights. Do you know what I mean? He did not have that 3 years out, but he was very, very active before the Wilder fights. And this year to 15 months out, I think it might play a role. He said it himself when it came to Billy Joe fighting Canelo. He said he shouldn't take that fight because he's been inactive too long. Meanwhile, he's going to go fight Joshua. And I feel like Joshua now has displayed quite a well-roundedness to his game. He's done the boxing against Ruiz and Parker in the past. He's done the knockouts versus obviously Pulev now. He's got that mojo sort of back. So I think it's a lot closer. If I was a betting man,
you know you're going to put your money on Fury. You know, if you had to bet your house on it, it would be Fury. Come on.
You know what it is? This is the thing. This is where I stumble because I really want Joshua to win. I followed his career way more closely than I did Fury's. I only sort of knew Fury until like the Chisora fight, so sort of deep into his career, where I've watched AJ since his pro debut. So there is that like slight bias there. But if I was a betting man, it's very, very close. But I'd probably bet on Fury, but I would want Joshua to win. I can't lie. But I think because it's a 2-fight deal that they've got, I do feel like if Joshua loses the first one, which I still think he has a very good chance of winning, I feel like he has a very, like, it makes it more likely to win the second one, in my opinion. Because he's seen from the Ruiz loss that he can rectify his mistakes and then go on to beat him. Whereas I feel like if it's the other way around and Joshua wins, we haven't seen Fury lose yet. And it could be a Wilder situation where he just goes off the rails, has the most amount of excuses, and we don't know what that loss is going to affect him. As it could make him a completely different beast, but it could also break him at the same time. So we don't know that. But as you've already mentioned, you're Fury, yeah. So,
okay. So just to clarify, so I followed Joshua's career from the very start as well. So I like Joshua as well. I do like both of them. I like both of them, but since Fury came out and started speaking about his mental health and so on and so forth, I just thought to myself, do you know what? This guy just comes across so real. And I do feel that Joshua has been sort of, I don't think that's really him. I think he's sort of been, it's the promotional machine behind him with Eddie Hearn, Matchroom and stuff like that sort of made him sort of be the likable kind of guy. I don't think that's actually really him. With Fury, I think he's quite raw and I think he's quite straight up. And I got to see the Fury Wilder fight live in LA. So I actually flew out to it. And for one of my best mates,
the first one or the second one?
Yeah, the first one in LA.
Oh wow!
The first one in LA. So that was an amazing experience. And then
what was that? Just... What was it like when he got dropped in the 12th? What was
Oh my god! So, so we had really good seats, and to be honest, we actually got a really good deal. I think it only cost us about £500 each. You know, that was including good fight tickets, accommodation. We went out for like 4 nights, just me and my mate, and. A lot of people, nobody knew who Wilder was. You know, this whole thing about people don't know who Wilder is.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got to the States, got to LA, got to the airport, the guys, obviously they question every dissy that's come from anywhere there, especially when there's just 2 of you. So the guy turned around and he goes, "Oh, so how come you're here?" And he goes, "Well, we're here for the fight." And he was like, "Well, who's fighting?" And we're like, Deontay Wilder. And he was like, I was like, against Tyson Fury? He was like, "Yeah, man, we know Tyson Fury." And I was like, what the hell is going on here? It's crazy. So even like a lot of the support, even a lot of the Americans there were supporting the Gypsy King. They were just the Gypsy King all the way. And we had a few Wilder fans near us. Anyway, throughout the whole fight, they were just quiet. Didn't say nothing, right? And we were all cheering, yeah. And then when he gets dropped in the 12th round, you should have seen him. You knew who the Wilder fans were because they just went up and they were just like over the moon, just like jumping up and down, going nuts. And we were like, oh, shit. But then when he got up, you just think, fucking hell.
It was weird. It was like a Undertaker moment. Like,
it was a pure Undertaker moment. But witnessing it live, I was just like, I thought, because it felt like we heard the punch. It was like, oh my God, it was brutal. And I thought, he's dead. He's gone. There's no fucking way he's getting up from that. And then he just got up. And then he won the rest of the round. I just, this guy is incredible, absolutely incredible. I was dead. But when they took ages with the scorecards, I was like, oh, here we go.
it shouldn't have been a draw. He won the first fight.
He won the first fight. But yeah, so that was an amazing experience.
And I think that sort of plays a role in the fight coming up as well. Like, he does have that sort of like majestic aura around him now as well. Do you know what I mean? Of like getting up in that fight. So it will be interesting to see. I think the announcement should, by the time this podcast goes out, the announcement should have already happened. And as I say, it's a 2 fight.
You would hope.
Hopefully, yeah. It's meant to be like finalized this week as we're recording, hopefully. But I think boxing is like, maybe not in America, but definitely over here, it's definitely booming. And I like that era, as you said at the beginning, like Rocky movies when I was growing up. I was watching Creed last night again, and it's just like that's what my upbringing was like. Ali and Tyson on cassette tapes and the VCR and that full banter. So we'll not talk too much about that. We'll get back on powerlifting.
Oh, back on track. Sorry, go
on. So after the British, was there more British and then you go on to the world? How did that work?
So actually we started looking at federations and seeing where we could sort of go further. So after the British, the federation that I was actually with, there wasn't like a direct path. You couldn't see which way you can go. You know, you do get invited, sometimes you don't get invited to the next stage, and there wasn't a clear path. And then we come across the federation that I live for now, which is the British Drug-Free Powerlifting Association. So we come across that, and the way that that federation was working at the time and still works really well now is it's a clear path. You know what you need to do. So you know what you need to do to qualify. And then the next stage is the British. If you're in the top 3 and you make your qualifying total, you then get invited to the Europeans and then to the Worlds. So I joined the BDFPA and then did my first competition there. First competition went really, really well. Absolutely smashed it. And actually, because I'd only been a member for I think a month or so with the federation, it was unofficial, but I unofficially broke the world records in the total, in the deadlift, and in the bench press. And I think in the squats, I think it was all over. I broke loads of, but I've never actually spoken about it much because I've thought it's unofficial, because it was unofficial because I had to be a member for at least 3 months, but I've done really, really well. Then I got invited to the British there with that federation. I come second in that, and I had my arch rival there, who actually turned out to be a good friend of mine afterwards. That was that, and then after that it was the Europeans. Again, the Europeans, I come second again. It was just so frustrating because at the British, I was squatting. I think it was my second squat. I think it's 100. My body weight was about 65 kilo then, and I was squatting on my second lift. As I went to go and squat up, my foot slipped, and basically the squat just come off. And luckily the guy was behind me because I would have done some serious damage. Mm-hmm. So that was classed as a no lift. And then we went into the deadlift, and this guy was really strong on his deadlift, but I was right neck and neck. And where I mentioned earlier, where I used my granddad as motivation, I pulled up 175 in the gym deadlift, and I knew I had to pull up a 187.5, and I'll be like, either I'll win it or it'll be very close. So it's quite a big jump.
Yeah.
But I just geared myself up. I was so fired up to go and lift it. It just flew. The lift just went. Before you knew it, they said good lift, and I was like, so yeah, that flew. And then at that point, we actually come I came second, but the total that we both done was exactly the same, but his body weight was slightly less. So he won it overall. And then I was just, oh, fuck's sake. So that was the British. And then the Europeans winning right the way through, got to the deadlift, went to go and pull up the deadlift, the final deadlift. As long as I'd done this, that's it, it's secured, no matter what, because I was so ahead on the squat and the bench press. Slipped out my hand. Eddie Hall style, slipped out of my hand. I was just like, and so I was just devastated. And the guy come up to me afterwards and he turned around, he goes, you know what? He goes, you deserve that. He goes, you deserve that. He goes, that was just out of order what had happened. But we became good friends and we started, we actually had a drink together afterwards. We had a good drink up actually afterwards. And then we got our medals and stuff in the Europeans. And then I went to the Worlds and then I won the Worlds. And I was like, yes, finally, finally, I don't have to come second.
At least
so
you
won
won where it matters. Do you know what I mean? Like that the world sounds a lot more impressive than European and British, respectively.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
as long as you won and then you won that twice as well, right?
Yeah, so I won that twice in 2 different weight categories. So at that time, my body weight category was 67.5 body weight, so below 67.5. And then the second time round, I was just under 75 kilo.
Right.
So I won that twice, yeah.
And just before we get into like your injury, are you still planning to compete now in the future, or are you still training, or
yeah? So still training. Planning on competing. I actually competed first time after 7 years. Back in 2019, actually. So after the injury, I made a comeback and I lifted in the deadlift and I pulled up a 250 kilo deadlift and set a new West Midlands record in the federation as well. And I actually qualified for the British, but COVID hit. So so the British was actually meant to be in 2020 in March, at the end of March, but clearly, I couldn't do that.
So are you because your injury was as a pec tear, wasn't it? So are you not are you not doing like benching and things anymore? Or are you just
so the plan was this time around was I was going to be a bit safe, and I thought, you know what, where there isn't as much strain on there, I'm going to just compete just in the deadlift. But now, to be honest, I think I'm fully healed up. I'm feeling quite strong, to be honest. I'm back at lifting what I was lifting on the bench and stuff. So I don't know, maybe towards the end of this year, depending on how training goes and so on and so forth, and we don't have no more lockdowns, I might lift in the full power. I might compete in the full power, and that'll be a big accomplishment for me because that's what I really want to get to be honest.
Yeah, to get back from the injury that you had, obviously with the pec tear, I imagine you had to do, like as we mentioned right at the beginning, a lot of tendon strengthening exercises for that.
Yeah, so it's all good me giving the advice that people shouldn't rush into it, but I honestly I rushed into it. So I took quite a bit of time out. I took about 2-3 years out from powerlifting, as in competitively. I was still doing it, but not like competitively and going crazy lifting heavy weights. But I just thought to myself, actually, do you know what? There's a competition coming up. I can make it. I can make that total. And my body weren't ready for it, and that's what happened. I got injured.
It does happen, like for myself. So I was like obviously getting into lifting and all that, and as you do, like 16, 17, gotten into the gym because I was a small little fatty, and then started getting into the gym, getting my lifts up and all, and starting to get into good physique. And then around like 21, I had a few operations that took me out of the gym for like 18 months to 2 years. Got back in, and egotistically was thinking, I could probably lift the same that I used to lift, and then boom, you're out of the gym for an extra month because you've done some like damage that it was just unnecessary, and it happened quite a few times. It took me like 3 or 4 times to learn my lesson properly of like, right, you're not as strong as you used to be. Calm down, you idiot.
It takes time to get back into it, but yeah. So with my injury, it was a case of I was suffering with my mental health previous to that, but I didn't realize I was before I got back into it. And the reason that I tried to get back into powerlifting was because I thought, if I get back into powerlifting, I've got a motive and I've got a focus, and I'm going to be feeling okay if I start powerlifting again. So I just rushed into it, basically. The thing with when you're suffering with mental health is you sort of find excuses to think to yourself why you're feeling down or why you're feeling upset. And I was blaming everything. It was either, oh, we had a wedding on the weekend, I drank too much. It's the alcohol that's making me feel like this. Oh, I'm not training properly, so I need to start training. So then I started boxing and I started doing boxing training. Okay, yeah, now I'm feeling a bit better again. But a few months down the line, getting that feeling back again, feeling a bit shit, feeling a bit down. Then I thought to myself, okay, you're just sort of jumping from, you're looking for excuses basically to
Distracting yourself.
distract yourself, and you're just fighting a battle where you think you're getting over it. But clearly I needed some kind of help, and I needed to speak to someone and get some guidance on it, on what was going on. But I didn't know that. And then I went into powerlifting, and then I was like, I've done this post, I've told everyone I'm making my comeback. And so, I have to go out and smash it. I put more pressure on myself, which is adding to all the shit that's going on in my head. And then I get injured. And then I put a post up saying, actually, I've got injured and blah, 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 blah. Then I realized how severe my injury is and that it needs to be operated on, and I'm going to be out for a fairly long time. So I think the thing with mental health is I couldn't put my finger on what was going on. And that's the worrying thing, because if it is something physical, you can physically see it or you can physically feel it. With mental health, you don't know that. So you don't know what you're going through or why you're going through like this, and you just make excuses.
Yeah. I think like when I was listening to your story, it seems like that the injury, from an outside perspective, you can sort of understand why that would sort of have the impact that it did. But like as you said, that you had experiences beforehand where you sort of couldn't put your finger on it. Like, so for anybody who's listening, just to give a bit of context, so Bally had the pec injury that we've already talked about, and then wasn't able to lift. He could very much not do like daily activities because it was that sore, like with one of his arms. And then, as many people, if you are not allowed to do your passion, your outlet for a long period of time, it would have its effect. However, beforehand, I think upon reflection, not trying to put words in your mouth, but upon reflection, going back, you realize that you had other mental health experiences that you didn't know were mental health experiences at the time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Could you explain what they were, and then how it sort of ramped up during the injury?
Yeah, it was a case of so I got married, and after getting married, I thought to myself, do you know what, I'm going to take a few years off, because with powerlifting, it's one of those things. You usually have potentially 3 to 4 competitions a year. And if you're thinking about an 8 to 10 week build up to the competition where you're training, it's quite a bit, and it takes it out of you, it takes its toll.
Mm-hmm.
And mentally it takes its toll as well, because you're focusing, it's tunnel vision. You're just focusing on that competition. You need to get those lifts in, week out. You're thinking, I need to increase by this much, I need to do an extra rep here. And mentally it's draining, as well as, clearly, because you're lifting so heavy, it's physically draining as well on the body. Mm-hmm. So I was doing that for many years, and then I decided in 2014, when I got married, I'm going to take a break from this, and I actually lifted. The last time I lifted was 2013, and so I got married in 2014. I thought, right, I'm going to take a break from it all and just focus on just chilling out, to be honest, and just training and doing bits and bobs, but not really focusing on it and putting that much strain on me. It was good. I enjoyed myself. We had parties and functions. When you get married first time, there's so many functions and stuff that you're invited to, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I had a good time. I had a good time going to these functions and eating and drinking. But then it was sort of got to the point where I woke up one morning and I thought to myself, I looked at myself in the mirror. I was hungover. I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, the fucking state here. As in, like, I wasn't like, put on loads of weight, but I was like, I didn't feel like I was in shape. And I just felt a bit disgusted in myself, to be honest. I was just like, and clearly the alcohol does play a part in it where you're on the come down the next day. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I need to do something. I don't want to be like this. I mean, I'm a 2-time world powerlifting champion. It's something that I've done and I've achieved. And, I'm still only 26, 27, I think I was at the time. So I was like, I'm still young. I need to just do something. I can't just do this. But I think at that point, that's when my mental health was actually starting to affect me, but I didn't realize that. And me feeling like that was the start of things to come, basically. And that's where I was sort of jumping from one thing to the other, where I was going to be the next Anthony Joshua, and the next minute I'm going to be the next Ronnie Coleman, where I'm just jumping from one thing to another. But that's the thing with mental health. You're just trying to distract yourself and trying to...
But not addressing the underlying issue.
Yeah, and keep that sort of that monkey off your back, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And then so it got to that point, and then I was focusing on my comeback. Then I got injured. Then I had the surgery, and then when I couldn't do anything, it was really sort of... it started getting worse. It was anxiety. Anxiety is the worst thing out there. So it was my anxiety. I didn't feel right. And like, if I go out with friends and family, I'm always the joker of the family, this, that, the other, and have a laugh and joke. And, Bally will organize this and Bally will do this and so on and so forth. But I was doing all that, and it felt like maybe I was putting on a bit of a front, to be honest. And because nobody knew that what I was going through, nobody had a clue.
Do you think as the guy you are, the 2-time world powerlifting champion, this quote unquote macho man, do you think that you had to put on that front?
It's ego. It's ego. I've learned now to drop that ego. And that's what it is with so many blokes out there. It's ego. It's all it is ego. And because of that ego, people are suffering, especially blokes are suffering in silence. They could be really suffering with their mental health, and they can't talk to anyone because there's that factor where I can't talk about this because I'm going to come across as weak. Yeah. And at the beginning, we were talking about culturally. Yeah. We were talking about culture. Yeah. So if we're talking about culture here, the Punjabi culture, right, the way it is, we're proud. We're, we like it. Potentially we like a drink, like weddings and parties and stuff like that. There's no time to turn around and say to someone, do you know what, I actually feel a bit shit.
It gets bushed under, sorry to interrupt, it gets bushed under the carpet whenever you talk about these things. It's like, oh, going on knee, just crack on sort of thing. It gets sort of bushed. Yeah, that exactly.
Do you know what I mean? That's it. And if you think about it, as amazing as our weddings are, if you think about the social aspect of it, if the majority of it, the social aspect of it, is the drinking side of things, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not a case that somebody can actually sit down and have a chit chat and talk about stuff and how things are going and blah blah blah. It's just booze related, isn't it? A lot of it is booze related,
and a lot of the time it's I'm not going to say the phrase that I was thinking of, but it's more of like it's everyone's trying to one up each other. I was going to say something penis length related, but I'm not. Do you know what I mean? It's everyone's just there at a table. Like if it's a table of uncles and everyone's drinking, it's a dick measuring contest. It's who's got.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, of course it is. Fucking hell, to all the glassy pitini.
Exactly.
Fucking hell, what the fuck you playing at? Do you get what I mean? Bro, man, I'm like. I'm 2-3 glassy up. What's going on?
But not just in drinking, but it's also like who's got the nicest car, who's got the most money in the bank, who's got the biggest businesses, and the wedding themselves. Often enough, it's not actually about the couple. It's just like which DJ did they get? Have they got a performer? How many guests have they got? How big is the venue? And all of these things. It's more about, it's the typical thing of lucky. It's all about lucky, isn't it? It's not about the people themselves. It's about other people in the community.
And that's the biggest problem out there. That is the biggest problem out there. And I always talk about this, but it just resonates with me so much. Where I spoke to my uncle about this, where a chap that I know that I used to go to school with, he committed suicide, and so I mentioned it to him, and he was like, he goes, "Pelli achta idda hunda nahi hunda saga," right? As in, back in the day, it never used to be like that. And I thought, he's going to go off on one now. You know, the whole, men were strong then, and this, that, the other, and blah, blah, blah. But he didn't go down that route. And I mention this story all the time because I think it's so, so important. He goes, back in the day, he goes, everyone, jobs and everything is at the same factory, it is at the same foundry, or wherever it was the same job. They were getting the same amount of money each week, right? So nobody was doing fantastically well, and nobody was, in a crap place. Everyone was on a level playing ground. Because of that, there was no ego. There wasn't the whole lucky. Okay. So with that, people could actually open up and say, do you know what? I've got a problem. I've got a financial problem. I've got a problem with my kids, or I've got a problem about this. And they'll talk about that between about 10 blokes, probably in the local pub having a pint, for example. Yeah. They'll talk about that. And before you know it, once they've shared that, there's probably 7-8 people there that'll turn around and say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Before you know it, that solution, there's a solution there. And before that issue gets to an issue where it's affecting the person's mental health, it's quashed, it's done. That's because they've spoken about it. Now people can't do that because people are too far, and people think too much about, well, if I turn around and say I've got an issue with something, they're going to think I'm weak, or they're going to think I'm not good enough, or they're going to go and gossip to somebody else. He's done this and he's done that. Even when, like, I've spoke out about my story, I guarantee you there's, I'm not stereotyping Orlandia here, but I guarantee you, somebody's watched that, they've gone back, gone into work, seen their fellow colleague who they have a gossip with, have a chat with, and they turned around and said, oh, well, such and such, Bally, did you see his interview the other day?
Yeah.
He goes, he's got mental health issues. Well, I didn't realize he had mental health. Do you know what I mean? It turns into gossip rather than, that's the problem with our community, I think. It turns into a lot of gossip when it should be more of a support mechanism, where it should be a case of, do you know what, Bally's spoken out about that, fair play, which, to be honest, 99.9% is that's what I've got. But it should be a case of people should be supporting each other and openly talking about these issues and these stigmas that are attached to it, and not be so fucking proud, basically.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you weak.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you summed it up really nicely there. It's like, I think a lot of maybe ethnic minority cultures are like this because they are quite tight knit in their communities. Like, everybody knows each other, so there is that. There still is like a lot of social standing, I guess, is very important. So it's all about your perception to other people. Like, how are you perceived by others? How is your social standing in your community when you go to the Gurdwara, who's got the nice cars with the fancy plates on and them things? Which, to be fair, I say that as like, now we've got to the point where it's starting to become a bad thing, because it's like people are going into debt to have a nice wedding to make it look fancy. However, I think there is sort of, that is the bad side of thing. The good side of thing is also like the competitive nature, as we were speaking about before, in powerlifting. When there's when you can see somebody similar to yourself who is striving, it sort of gives you the motivation to strive as well. So that competitive aspect in the community can be good, but I think it is now went so far as to becoming bad. I think, hopefully I've said that right, because I don't want to slander the community, because we, as Sikhs in the UK, if you look at population percentage to GDP percentage, it's very impressive. I think we're like 1% of the population and around 10% of the wealth, which we're doing something right for that to happen as well. However, when it comes to this side of things, where like social standing becoming more important than your actual physical and mental health, that's when it sort of becomes a bad thing. Hopefully I've said that right.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think, look, at the end of the day, if there's people out there that are striving, people in our community that are doing some amazing stuff, right, and fair play and brilliant, right, and that's good for our community as well. Yeah, there's I'm not saying that people that are are wealthy or have done well, that they're wrong in any kind of way. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. Similar
100%.
to what you're
I'm not
saying,
saying, I'm not
I
saying that
think
you were.
I think we just need to realize that there are issues in our community, and not just our community, as in if we look at the wider side of things, as in men, there are issues there, but there are challenges of opening up and talking about this, talking about various different subjects.
100%. Like again, I wasn't trying to say that you were going down that route. I just wanted to highlight that, like, obviously, I sort of want to play like devil's advocate of just saying it's not all bad. There are good aspects, but like everything, it's not black or white. Do you know what I mean? There is like a gray area in there, and I think often or not, those who are very successful, they're not the ones that are going to be saying, "Oh, did you see Bally's interview? He said this," sort of thing. They're going to be the ones who are supporting, because it is often the ones that are not really doing. And again, this is not trying to be stereotypical, but it's not really doing too much with their own lives, that they're focusing too much on others, maybe putting other people down to make themselves feel better because they're not doing what they want in their own lives, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's not just in our culture, is that obviously, as you mentioned, it's a men thing in general. There's a brilliant page on Instagram called Seek Gent. I don't know if you follow him. And
Yeah, I know him. I know the chap. Yeah,
dedicated to like men's mental health, and he has like a lot of statistics on there as well. And when I came across that page, I was shocked, to be honest. Like, the amount of referrals through the NHS is very slim. Like, I think it's 3 times the amount of women, but it's like a considerably higher amount of men commit suicide. And it's just that thing where we just don't talk about these things openly. There is that stigma still there. So hopefully, like yourself, a big, strong man, world powerlifter champion, all of that banter. Do you know what I mean? Like, you are what people would think. There's going to be nothing wrong with him. He's a big, young, strapping lad. And then when you're talking about it, it is that thing where it's like anyone can have this. It does break that stigma.
Yeah, hence the reason why I decided to come out and talk about it, because to be honest, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy making the move and sort of writing out a post and saying I've suffered with my mental health, because it's not an easy subject to talk about. But now there's so many. The good thing is, and the beauty of it is, there's so many. I've realized now that I've started doing all this, there are so many places and people and charities, especially within our community, that are raising awareness on this, which is, do you know what? It's so refreshing to see. You've got like, to mention a few, you've got Seek Your Mind, you've got Tarakki, Seek Forgiveness. There are so many, and if I haven't mentioned them all, you know who you are. But there are so many out there which talk about not just mental health, but they talk about taboo subjects. So they talk about suicide, which is something that nobody, it's a very, very sensitive subject where people don't really talk about it. They talk about men's mental health. They talk about so many different taboos, and I think it's amazing. And I think fair play. And I think the more and more people that do it, the better it is. But yeah, with me, it was a case of I spoke to my wife, and my wife actually, she supported me a lot when I was suffering with my mental health. So going back to the point where I realized I still didn't realize I had an issue, where things were going quite bad, were when I would break down, as in emotionally, at home sometimes, but I wouldn't know what it was.
what would like, what was the like, how would, if you were to say like what were the symptoms of a breakdown, if that makes sense, like what was it actually, were you just bursting out in
It would
tears or?
just, yeah, I think it was like the whole anxiety side of things. It would just be sort of building up, building up, building up, and I could feel this build up, and then I'd just explode, and I'd break down, I'd cry, and then I'd feel all right again. It was like, as if I've sort of released that sort of pressure, and I then sort of realised that, what is it? What the fuck am I actually crying about? Or what the fuck is it that I'm actually upset about? There isn't anything. And then I dwell on that. I think to myself, well, if there isn't anything, clearly I've sat down and realized there isn't anything. Why am I feeling like this? I'd then dwell on that. I'd just dwell on that. And then before you know it, a few months down the line, I'd have the same thing again. But I'd be blaming other things.
What was the change in this reoccurring theme? I know, like, from the video you did on your YouTube channel, there's a story of the doctor's office. So
Yeah.
do you want to what happened on that day?
Yeah. So I was probably about this has probably happened about 3-4 times to me now. And I think it got to the point where my wife turned around and said, look, something's not right here. I mean, she's not no exactly expert in mental health, but she was like, something's not right here. You know, you can't be doing this. This isn't normal. When I mean that it isn't normal, it is normal. People go through it, but we didn't know what was going on and how to sort of tackle it. Because again, once I'd sort of broken down, I'd go through a time where I was fine again, and then it would build up, and happen again. So it got to the time where she turned around. She goes, "Listen," she goes, "enough's enough, right?" She goes, "It's fine. You've got my support, but you need to go to the doctors, right? You need to go and seek help and find out what the hell is going on, because I don't want you being like this." So yeah, so then I went to the doctors, and again, even at that point, I was making excuses. I got there and I went there on my own, and the doctor goes, you know, how can I help? And I started talking about my shoulder. My shoulder was fine. My shoulder was fine, right? But I started talking about it. Oh, sometimes it hurts. This, that, the other, blah 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 blah. And he was like, okay, well, you need to do this and you need to do that, and maybe ease off the bench press and blah blah blah. So fine. And then as I was walking out, thankfully, thank God, he turned around and he goes to me, he goes, "Are you sure you're okay, Mr. Cheema?" And then that's when I turned around and I said, "No, I'm not, actually." And then I got a bit teary-eyed and I said to him, "Look, I don't know what the fuck's going on with me, doc, to be honest." I was totally honest with him. And said, "Look, these are the kind of episodes I'm having. Can you help me? Because it feels like it's not normal." And this is where he then started explaining to me, actually, what you're going through is actually very normal. A lot of people suffer with it, and it's not uncommon. But he then told me the different routes I can go down. I can go down consultation, therapy, or I can go down the taking medication and stuff like that. Being a drug-free powerlifter, I didn't want to go down the medication route. I mean, if people want to go down that route, I know people that have gone down that route, fair play, that's fine. But me personally, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try doing the therapy and the consultation side of things. And that was it. And then I made the phone call to get help, and I spoke to someone on the phone. I didn't think it was going to help me, to be honest. I didn't think it was going to help me at all. But made the phone call, had a conversation. I wasn't at the stage where some people are, where it was, I want to end my life, and I was suicidal. That wasn't the case with me. With me, it was just a case of something wasn't right, and I wasn't feeling too happy, basically, and too confident in myself. And I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put a finger on it. But then when I spoke to the therapist over the phone, then I got booked in, and I actually had face-to-face sessions. This is pre-COVID, and had some face-to-face sessions. And by the end of it, I felt great. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and that was just by talking. I didn't do anything else. That's all it was. And to be honest, she didn't go into so much detail about, talk to me about your mental health, this, that, the other. It was just someone that I can talk to. It's an open space for me to talk about stuff that's happened in my life, and I know that that's not going to go any further.
A confidentiality, and plus, like, if like, I think what also needs to be realized is with these people, they get training on this. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they just pick up Joe Blogs on the street and say, right, your job today is just to talk to people. It's like they actually, like, they're not going to say what's your mental health problems, because that is quite a daunting question to ask. They know, like, the little nuances. I heard on your obviously in your story, the YouTube video that you did, is like you opened up so much without even realizing, because they have like little prompt questions, which it doesn't seem daunting. It's quite open, and it just lets you flow, and they know, like, the little trigger points to open up that conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And that was it, to be honest. And I was cured. Well, I wasn't cured, but I was in a better place. And then everything was fine. And then while everything was fine, this is something I didn't actually mention in my interview. Everything was fine and everything was going well. I was training again. I came back. I competed again. That went really well. And then my uncle passed away, and he was only 50, and so he passed away, and I was very close to him. And again, I was back at that stage again where I was feeling down, and potentially because of obviously bereavement, I was grieving, I was grieving in a form of way. But people grieve in different ways, so it sort of hit me probably about a week or two afterwards, and I was back in that same ditch. Let's just say I was back down in that hole again. But this time, I knew what the issue was. And this time, I went back to the doctors, got referred again, went through the same process again, because this time I knew what I needed to do. I knew that this would help me move forward.
Have the tools at your disposal this time, whereas last time you didn't.
Yeah. So I actually knew what I needed to do. So the reason I wanted to make this point was I don't want people to think that once you've got, with mental health, it's something that you work on a regular basis. Okay. So it's not a case that you take your medication and that's it, you're cured for life and you're going to live happily ever after. Okay. You're going to have therapy and you're going to go once and you're going to, everything's going to be hunky-dory and you're going to feel top of the world. It doesn't work like that. There are going to be points where, there are certain things that are going to be challenging, that are going to affect your mental health. But there's no harm in speaking out about it and knowing where to go, because this time around I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't have to try and seek the answer from somewhere else.
100%. And as we're talking about this, because it is quite a deep sort of conversation, and if anyone is struggling, what I'll do is link some places that you can go to talk to people in the description of this. I'll put it as maybe the top link, and then Bally Socials will be underneath that, because it is really important. And obviously, I think that the main thing here is, like, don't suffer in silence. Do you know what I mean? Like, reach out, speak to somebody. If you have friends that you feel comfortable talking to, talk to them. If you have family, but if you don't, as we've mentioned throughout this, like, in our culture, sort of, it's not as accepting as perhaps others, then reach out to, like, organizations. There's like, I think there's a website on the NHS that has basically links to numerous websites. So I'll try to find that
there's
one
so
link.
much out there. There's so much out there now.
And I think something that you said before is, like, when you sort of become aware of it and sort of seek out that sort of information, you realize how much there is. Like, do you know what I mean? Like when you're not aware of it, like it doesn't exist. But when you become aware of it and you realize like there are so many resources online, like if you just have like a couple of seconds to look, you'll realize that there's so many different organizations. There's so many, as you said, there's Sikh orientated ones. So that there's ones that will adapt to your culture. Because sometimes even that makes it easier if sometimes, like, let's be quite frank, like I'm not going to relate to the problems that a black guy has, and a black guy's not going to relate to the problems that a Chinese guy has, or to a white guy. So if there's even organizations that fit your culture a bit more, then it makes it a lot easier to talk
But why do you think that is, though? Why do you think there's so much out there? Because there's so many people that are suffering. If you have a look at all the stuff that's coming out now, especially now during the pandemic, there's so many stuff coming out. There's documentaries coming out left, right, and center about mental health. But people need to understand, and this is the key point that I'm trying to get through to people. And again, it comes down to the whole breaking of the stigma. Is mental health does not mean that, well, it does mean depending on how severe it is, but you can be suffering with mental health if you're just going through a bad patch in your life. That is mental health. It doesn't mean, like, I've come across people when I've spoken to them about it and sort of said, you know, I've had to word it differently, and even on my podcast is worded differently, because it's a case of, if you've suffered some kind of adversity in your life, where somewhere or another, I bet you every single person has suffered some kind of adversity in their life, they would have felt shit, or they would have felt down, or it would have affected them in some kind of way. But then when they've overcome that, that's basically them overcoming the mental health side of things. So it doesn't mean that you need to be at a point where you want to end it all. That's what mental health is, because the people that I've been talking to, when you mention the word mental health, that's it. That's what they think. They think that you're at the stage where, you know, you want to end it all, but that's not the case. And it wasn't the case with me either. So I think it's just very important to educate people to understand there's different types of mental health. And when we talk about mental health, it does not mean the worst case scenario, basically, which in some cases it does, unfortunately, but it doesn't always mean that. You can still seek help, even if you're at a stage where you're suffering with anxiety or you're suffering with something or another.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's relative. It's everything is relative. I think like mental health is sort of similar in that parallel, is that like your problems or your problems, only you know the extent of that problem. It could be, and this is where I think where people sort of like you said, like people's perceptions are to the extremes, because your problem to somebody else might be minuscule, but they might have a problem to you which will be minuscule, but your problems to you might be the biggest thing, and they're like Mount Everest, do you know what I mean? And to somebody else it could be a little hill, do you know what I mean? But I think that's like a good way to sort of, maybe it's a shit way to explain it, to be honest, because I'm not very good at this shit yet. But
listen, I'm totally new to all of this anyway. So even for me, it's a case of, I don't think, sometimes I feel to myself, do you know what? Maybe I can get my point across in this way. Maybe I can get my point across in that way. But all I'm doing is just trying. I'm just trying to just, so people so understand that, do you know what? It's okay. And like you touched on before, it's a case of where on the outside, if I didn't mention anything about mental health, going back at the end of last year, actually, no, it was the end of the year before. End of last year? No, the year before, sorry, back in 2019, towards the end of 2019.
2020 didn't count.
Yeah, 2020 didn't count, actually. If I didn't mention it, nobody would have known, because they would have thought, again, like you said, the least likely person is myself, because in everybody else's eyes, he's a big, strong power lifter. You know, he's always out and about. He's happy. He's married. He's got kids. He's happy. He ain't ever going to be suffering from any kind of. He must be in a really, really good place. But a period in my life, I went through a shit time, and that's why I decided to come out and talk about it, because I thought there's so many people out there that are suffering, but they think that it's not okay to talk about it.
And I think that's why, again, I said it before and I'll say it again, I think that's why it's so important for yourself to come out, because one, obviously, we've already mentioned like our culture, and you being like a man from our culture talking about it is very liberating to other men from our culture that are going through similar problems. And again, because for men outside of that culture, you being the world champion powerlifter, like a big strap-in man, talking about how his feelings is just not the norm, and it should be, but it isn't. So hopefully with yourself doing it, and I know obviously we mentioned Tyson Fury before, the world heavyweight champion boxer, who is literally the most manly person that you can ever get. And like, if you look through history, that is the highest regard of a human being ever.
Yeah,
Do
of
you know what I
course.
mean? And he's talking about these problems as well. And I think when you have people like yourself, like Tyson Fury, and that people regard as macho men, in inverted commas, I guess, talking about these problems, then it becomes like a lot more liberating for, I guess, your average Joes to speak about them as well. Do you think another problem in our culture is that people, similar to like the episodes that you were having, the breakdowns, mistake that for something perhaps supernatural? Let's put you on the spot here.
Yeah, no. You're right. You have got a point there. Go on, go into a bit more detail. What do you mean by supernatural? Go on, just say it.
I don't want to say it because
Go on, say it. Fucking say it. Go on.
Well, you hear it, don't you? You go to India and things, and you see people having yeah, where it's like, from obviously a Western country, when I go to India, and maybe I'm a bit more skeptical of these things, and I see things a bit more through a sciencey lens. I'm like, I'm not 100% convinced that is the case, and there is a full economical system built around it, so it's hard to make that argument because a lot of money's involved. But do you think that in our culture especially, them sort of mental health issues get disregarded, and instead you go down the path of, right, actually what you need to do is see this guy who's sitting cross-legged somewhere, he's going to whack a few things on you, and you've got to pay him a bit of dosh, and then it's all going to go away?
Yeah, I think that is something that needs to be spoken about, and again, it's not spoken about, and it does need to be spoken about. And I think if you look at like people that suffer with their mental health, they could go down the addiction route. So it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, but I think it's quite, you get that in our culture where they turn around and say, well, if he's become an alcoholic or if he's become a drug user, somebody's done something to him. And if you go and see this baba, I've heard about it before. Go and see this baba. He's he's going to do whatever he's going to do, and then he's not going to be an alcoholic anymore, or he's not going to suffer with his mental health anymore. So there is things like that out there. And yeah, it is out there in our culture, isn't it? And it is, yeah.
It's a hard
something
one
that
to
needs to
say
be
because it
about.
is, again, it's I think not many people will understand it. It's hard to sort of explain and talk about, because one, there is that slight fear in the back of your mind as well. I'll be honest, when I'm saying it, there's that slight fear that maybe they do actually have mystical powers, and me speaking against them might get me fucked up in some way. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I have a car crash next week or some shit, then you know why, yeah. But there is that sort of fear in that sense as well. But I think it's,
We're not well. Well, we're not. Well, the thing is, let's clarify. We're not saying that they have or they haven't got these powers or whatever it is. But what we're saying is, it's something that is in our culture that people automatically think that if somebody's got some kind of an issue, that potentially they could go here and see this guy. And
instead of seeking actual proper medical advice.
yes,
Yeah, because I don't know how to approach that one specifically, because again, it's a very specific sort of thing, and it is very, again, taboo, and it's a bit of an awkward one, isn't it? But
just a bit.
Because I see it as well. Like, sometimes when you go India and things, and you're like, oh, there's a full economy built around this specifically, and it's very obvious from an outsider that, like, look, he's clearly getting taken advantage of, and you shouldn't be giving all of your money to this person, where you need to actually give all that money to an actual medical institution, and it could go a lot better. But then again, if I have a car crash next week, you give that money to them,
no comment.
Exactly. Like, as I say, there's that slight fear that if it is true, then you don't want to speak against it. But
Yeah,
I'm not saying that it isn't. It isn't. And one thing I should add is, if it works for you, it works for you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it might be a placebo, and it might actually be real. I don't know. But if it does work for you, it works. However, they do seem to get a lot of returning customers, so I don't think it does actually work. I'll say that. But
you said it, not me. I didn't say anything. Don't involve me in this controversy.
Right. So, moving swiftly on from that from that little awkward topic of conversation, with obviously your mental health journey, you've spoken out obviously on social media, and now you have your own podcast as well, where mental health is like the main topic, and you speak to various people. And what are your hopes, aims, and what is the podcast about?
So my podcast is Lift Your Life, Bally Cheema, Lift Your Life. So it was a bit of a off the cuff kind of thing, to be honest, how it came about, because once I'd done that interview, I got a few messages come through saying it was really good. But if it was in audio format, this is how it started, by the way, how crazy it is, right? If it was in some kind of an audio format, we'd prefer it, because nowadays people listen to podcasts, right? I was like, okay. so then it just came about, the idea came about, and I thought, right, because I wanted to do something where I wanted to talk to people and discuss some kind of adversity that they've suffered in their life. So I left it quite open. So it's not, it has to be somebody that suffered with their mental health, because they might not know that they might have suffered with their mental health, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole purpose of it is if I've got these people on there, so I've had some really, really interesting people on there. Again, very similar to the whole point of, similar to myself, where people wouldn't expect me suffering with my mental health. So I've got some people on there that you would think to yourself, there's no way that this guy suffered with his mental health, right? But they talk about it. They talk about a time which was a dark time in their life, and how they overcame that, and what they've done, and where they're at now. So the whole purpose of it is so people can understand that there are people out there, the people that you least expect, that are suffering with their mental health, or have overcome some kind of adversity in their life, and they're willing to talk about it. So if they're willing to talk about it, anyone's willing to talk about it, and everyone should be open enough to talk about it. So yeah, it's basically just guinea pigging off the back of my story, where people have sort of been fairly shocked that I've come out and spoke about it. So I'm hoping that people listening to these podcasts that I'm doing are actually feeling quite inspired and quite motivated. Thinking, do you know what? Actually, yeah, I'm suffering. That guy suffered. There's no way I thought he would suffer. He's had adversity in his life. He's overcome it. And if it can even help just one person that listens to my podcast and just picks up the phone and reaches out to someone, that's the goal. That's the aim.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely 100% credit to you for doing that. Like, again, it's that thing where when more people talk about it, the stigma sort of it just goes away. It'll take time, and it'll happen slowly, but it will, because again, I've seen some of the guests that you've had on so far, and like yourself, they're not people that you would expect. And I think that's the most important thing, is that this is a thing that is it's very tricky. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone's talking about how this COVID thing's a very complex sort of virus and all that. Mental health's probably more complex. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very tricky old thing, and it's a credit to yourself for doing this. Like, and hopefully, like, going forward, we can speak to more people and sort of lose the stigma. I've had a few chats on the podcast so far about, like, where And I'm not gonna lie, I have oversimplified it in the past of using this like sort of downward spiral that you can get into, and sort of flipping it around to like boost you upwards. And that parallel was used in lifting quite a lot, because a lot of the people who get into lifting, like myself, got either fat shamed or skinny shamed, to the extent where they get in constant, maybe constant in some cases, or just abuse in general to themselves, and using them negatives and turning them as like rocket fuel to propel them forward into their gym journey. And hopefully, as we were saying before, when people can overcome their mental health problems that are relative to themselves, they can go and talk to other people, or it can propel them forward in their own life, and it's a knock-on effect. It's a domino effect. You know what I mean? It takes one, and then others will fall. Again, I'll link your link tree, which has got everywhere that you can listen to Bally's podcast, in the description of this podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube, Apple, all the places. But no, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been good, man. But what I like to do just before we finish is end with the same 5 questions that I ask every single guest.
Here we go. By the way, he's not actually told me what these questions are, so
I don't tell anybody, because I like watching people squirm. It's a guilty pleasure of mine.
Go on then.
We'll get cracking. So first one is, what are you most proud of?
There's so many things. I would probably say, if I fucking hell, it's a combination of things. Can I use a combination of things? So it's a combination of things. So for me is becoming world powerlifting champion. That was like the ultimate for me. And doing what I'm doing now, as in speaking out on mental health. I get messages now, and it's just such an amazing feeling that I'm reaching out to people that I wouldn't ever have thought that I'm reaching out to, who are basically saying the stuff you're doing is amazing, and it just gives me that. I'm just so proud of that for what I'm doing with regards to becoming a mental health advocate, whatever that's meant to be, an advocate. Maybe
I said it at the intro of this as well. I said it at the intro of this as well. But I don't know how to otherwise explain the term. Like, do you know what I mean? I think it is the label now of what you do. But number 2 is, what are you most looking forward to?
To be honest, I'm looking forward to going back to the gym, but I'm not too concerned about the gym, because I'm quite lucky. I'm quite blessed. I've actually got a fairly decent weight set up at home. But I am looking forward to going to the gym. I'm just looking forward to fucking meeting people. Friends, family, going out, going to restaurants, going to bars, pubs, and then just meeting people. And I feel like I'm gonna, this year, as long as everything is, the roadmap is clear, how they're saying it, I think I'm gonna go out and just meet people that I haven't met in years. Just go out and just reach out. And I think everyone else is going to be in that same boat, and I just can't wait for that, to be honest.
100%. I feel like that you got to take the positives out of a negative, and that's probably one of the positives of this pandemic.
Having a beer on April 12th.
Definitely.
Cannot wait.
After a gym session.
I don't know about
that. What is your biggest motivation?
What's my biggest motivation? Yeah, my biggest motivation for me is definitely my family and my 2 daughters. They mean the world to me. So yeah, I just love spending time with them, and just love seeing them grow up. Yeah, they really bring out the soft side in me.
What is your definition of success?
My definition of success is being happy. But so I've been reading up a lot of stuff about, this is a bit of a long-winded answer now, but I've been reading up a lot of stuff on like monks and things like that, and why are they always so content and happy with their life? Because they believe in like a fine line with everything. So happiness is the same. Everything they keep at a balance. And I think if you're at that place where you're at a balance where you're not overly happy, you're not overly sad, and your everything is within that balance, I think that is the perfect ideal way to live.
So going from Bally Big Bollocks to Monk Bally now, yeah?
I'm not planning on being a monk.
No, that is interesting, to be fair. Like, I've seen that Jay Shetty, I think, was a monk as well.
Yeah.
He's got a book out.
Yeah.
It's on my reading list, so I'll get to it
Yeah.
eventually, maybe in a few years.
Yeah, and me, I'm the same, to be
Yeah,
honest.
exactly. I've got a reading list that I just, honestly, it's too long. But last but not least, because it's the KultureKast podcast, how has your culture affected you in your journey thus far?
So my culture, if I talk about, I don't think I've spoken about it enough. So with regards to Sikhi in my life, has really put me on the right path. And even when I was struggling with my mental health, I did start looking into a lot more into my Sikhi. That sort of kept me level-headed, and that's really supported me and aided me. As a young child, I've always done my Mool Mantar. So in the morning, I do that. That's sort of something I do on a regular basis. I've actually taught my daughter it. She's 3 years old and she knows it. Fair play to her.
That's good.
But no, that's really, really, really helped me in everything I do. And like I mentioned before, with regards to my lifting and everything, I always have Waheguru in my head when I go to lift. I don't actually listen to hardcore hip hop when I'm about to compete, actually. So I get questions asked on what I actually listen to. And I actually listen to a lot of like Sikhi sounds, Sikhi music. So I listen to a lot of that before I lift at a competition. So that's played a massive, massive part in my life, and it will always play a massive part in my life.
Smashed it. It is interesting because again, going back to Inder Bassi in that podcast, I asked him what his like pre-fight ritual is, like what is the day, because obviously you need to conserve your energy for your fight. You don't want to get too excited and you don't want to get like and burn this nervous energy. And he said something very similar. He's like, I just stay in the hotel room that I'm at, do my part, and then when it's time to go out, I go out. And it's a good thing. Like I've said it before on podcasts as well. This modern day meditation and all these things that are coming out now is these really, really good things to help, and they have been in our like scriptures for.
That's what it is. That's literally what it is. And when you get a lot of people saying, "Look, I've started meditating this, that, the other." A lot of up in it that sort of saying, I've started meditating this, that, the other. Fair play to you, crack on. Mm-hmm. But you just think to yourself, that's been in our religion for how many years?
Exactly.
Maybe have a look into that, because I've done it a few times where I've actually done the part while listening to someone doing it, if you know what I mean. So basics of Sikhi. Mm-hmm. So I've used that a few times, and I've walked away like just refreshed and ready to go.
You get into some weird states that you don't even realize. Like sometimes even I get teary-eyed sometimes when I'm sitting there. I don't know what happens. It's just like it is connecting with your inner self and things. But they were the five questions. So you smashed it. But no, as I say, all the links will be in the description of where you can catch Bally's podcast and his socials, which is just Instagram, right?
Yeah, well, it's Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well. I've been on Facebook for a while, but Instagram is just Bally_Singh _Cheema. Please follow for exclusive content. So I do all sorts on there. I've got my training videos on there. I actually done a full day of eating. That was fun. The other day. So you can see what I eat as a powerlifter.
Your eggs. That's what I've got to quit. How do you not season your eggs? Like there was nothing on your scrambled eggs.
Yeah, do you know what? I think everyone asked me this question. They're like, you know what? I don't know how you can eat like eggs just like that. And I was like, what? I just think of it as fuel. Do you know what I mean? Like even before I jumped on this podcast, quick 3 scrambled eggs, bang, done. But like I think at one point, I was doing like 5-6 eggs.
You would not be having fun on the toilet.
Mate. mate. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. But yeah, so yeah, I don't season my eggs, unfortunately. Maybe on the weekend if I'm lucky, if the wife's making them, but
Yeah.
otherwise no.
No, but smashed it. And yeah, so check out them links. As I say, I'll leave the link to the NHS's website, which has a variety of links to mental health websites as well for them, for you to check out them. And I shall catch everybody in the next episode. Peace. Wicked.